And the way that we normally start these podcasts off, just for the record, we don't have like this Glenn Beck, welcome back to blah, blah, blah. We kind of just... We started off the first episode like that, and I hated it. So now we like to just have a little bit of conversation going into it, and it just kind of flows naturally. But
that was very natural.
Thank you. I planned that. But going back to your thing about the name, whatever. So like that's the whole medicine goes down with a spoonful of sugar. The truth goes a little bit easier with some friendly banter and some popcorn.
So who came up with the name?
I was also Johnny. A lot of answers are going to be Johnny if we're being honest.
Yeah. All the hard work. Actually, not even hard work. I don't want to say that.
No, we're going to say it.
All the grunt work.
Yeah, all the hard work.
All the grunt work has been me for sure.
Yeah.
So how'd you come up with it?
Well, Austin's and my conversations have always been trying to nail down these broad topics and controversial topics. We try to nail something down to what we call the kernel of truth. And so I wanted to name the podcast. I wanted to name the podcast the Kernel of Truth Podcast, but that was already taken.
Okay. I like that. That's well, not that I dislike where you've landed, but it's a little more
Does it have your approval now?
But yeah, no, I like Kernel Popcorn. Sounds good.
You know, it's funny. I tried to get I tried to make an intro to the podcast by using, like an AI image generator. And so I'm describing to the AI what I want. I'm like, I want a kernel, like a popcorn kernel, to start to buzz and gyrate about and then to pop into a popcorn. That's all I need. Just want that. Just super simple. And man, it came up with all kinds of like the popcorn like grows out of the kernel like broccoli almost, like all kinds of weird stuff.
It was into a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah. It was just way too difficult for the AI to handle. I thought it was a very simple ask, but couldn't handle it. So we're gonna Logan, we're gonna move into the section where I obviously am very well acquainted with you. You and I have been friends for over a decade at this point. And we met each other at a pivotal and embarrassing time in our lives, at least for me. I'll speak for myself. But for my brother and for anybody else, I'd love to get, just time to turn the mic over to you, kind of give a little bit of background.
Wait, what was embarrassing about that time of your life?
Yeah, that's why I want some follow-up on real quick.
See, this isn't a narrative podcast. This is a discussion and a debate podcast. So
well, this is now the discussion, I guess.
It was just a rough time for me, man. I'll be honest with you. College was not my...
College wasn't great for you?
Dude, I saw a post on Facebook that has never hit harder where it said something to the effect of, if you knew me back in my early 20s, I just want to apologize. The writers during that time were on strike and production was very low budget. So if you saw those seasons, just know that we don't count them as canon or something to that effect.
We're not proud of them either.
We're not proud of them either. If you watch those seasons, we apologize. Writers were on strike. But that's kind of how I see my early adulthood.
Well, you see, I looked up to you back at that time.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry, Logan.
I think that's universal, even without going to college. We all have a similar experience.
In your early adulthood?
I'm so glad my wife didn't know me from undergrad. It's like amazing that the timing worked out, because had she met me a year sooner, even, it would have not gone well.
How you know it was fate?
I think so, yeah. Okay, well...
all you, Logan. Time for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, Johnny knows me well. Austin, it's nice to meet you formally. Yeah, so, I would say I'm a West Coast person. My family all comes from California. My mom's family comes from Korea. I grew up in Nevada near Las Vegas, Henderson. And then I went to Utah for undergrad. That's where I met Johnny. And Johnny and I were roommates for one full year. And then we were good friends the rest of the time. And I was there for a while, so I have a lot of time to get to know Johnny. And I do mean it. I looked up to you. I still do, in the sense that I think when I arrived in undergrad, I wasn't really a college student in terms of just maturity or knowing what the heck is going on, what I'm doing. So in that sense, it was good to interact with a variety of people, and Johnny and I clicked quite quickly. I think we have a lot of similarities there. But Johnny got me out of my shell, so I was quite subdued and withdrawn, just because, I had a very, let's say, comfortable, easygoing background. And that makes my testimony, I know you're going to ask about that, very boring, just grew up Christian, always been that way. Um, no major issues, so nothing really defining up until that point. And so Johnny helped me out quite a bit, just seeing how he interacted with people, how he saw things. So nothing but good things to say there. Now,
Man,
because
I was
Austin
hoping for all the
asked,
bad things for sure.
no, I mean, I don't have a lot of bad things in the sense that Johnny's not a bad guy. So, what's bad about the
Yeah, I
so
guess he's all right.
I was about to say Austin can say all the bad stuff about me.
there you go. Yeah. And then religiously, I mean, I would say I'm non-denominational, but I don't really like that because that itself is a denomination. And then you can play all sorts of word games, interdenominational or whatever. I don't think too much about denominations because I kind of have a problem with the official narratives and the ways that you're supposed to look at things and approach things. And so I think that's something that Johnny has identified as a kernel that he wants to explore and why he invited me on here. So I think non-denominational fits pretty well, but there's a lot of room in there. And I would say it's the world of denominations is very complicated. So I can tell you a little bit about it, not a lot. But at the end of the day, it's more like if I move to a new place, I'll find a church I really like. If it's Baptist, if it's non-denominational, if it's something else, it doesn't really matter to me.
Just curious, Logan, have you even like gone to the channel? Have you seen any of the stuff that we talk about?
Let me tell you about my prep. I did not prep at all. I didn't watch your channel. I didn't think about your questions. However, I spoke to every Christian mentor that I have or have had, and I gave them an inkling of this conversation to come and asked them their thoughts. And so there's an extreme lack of preparation and an extreme overdone preparation here. Now, what I will tell you is I'm not going to share or even reflect any of the things that my mentors told me, mainly because those aren't my own thoughts and words. But I am prepared in the sense that I've thought about this a lot.
All right, fair enough. The whole idea of the podcast, really, and just in a nutshell, is we're living in a world where people are talking past each other. We're using a lot of the same words, but clearly with different meanings. There's, in my opinion, there's a push to redefine certain meanings. And the more that my recent conversion to believing in God, and Austin and I, we spent the first episode or two episodes, I forget which one, but we cover a lot of ground where there's a difference between something that is true and something that is real. Just because something is real doesn't make it true. And just because something is true doesn't necessarily make it real. So the example that I use is my whole growing up, I was taught to believe in God. Austin and I were brought up in a very Christian conservative household. So God was introduced to me, and it was obviously God's existence is true. But it wasn't real to me in any way where it affected my behavior. I didn't act as if I believed that. So while God was true, he was not real to me. Now that he is real to me, I have changed my life to reflect that I believe he is very, very real on a daily basis. So that's kind of the whole idea of this podcast is what is truth? How do we go about deciding what is true in today's world where you can kind of pick your flavor of just about anything and find a lot to back that up. Just because it's real doesn't make it true. So with that kind of going into it, would you say that like as an adult, because again, Austin and I grew up in a religious household where we went to church every Sunday, but it was kind of, I don't want to say at gunpoint, but it was like you're going to church.
Yeah, it was.
It was a very gentle gunpoint. But it was not necessarily of our own volition. You're saying that as an adult, completely of your own volition, if you were to move, you would immediately go and seek out some kind of community and church to belong to.
Yes, absolutely.
And I ask why? Like what? Why is this real to you?
I think that if you were parachuted into a random place in the world, the first thing you would do is look for a church. I mean, that's the one place where you know what you share with the other people around you, shared values, shared culture, sense of right and wrong. And there's a very practical utility there. I mean, you can make friends and they'll stay your friends. You can trust people. There's going to be a baseline of shared understanding there. So if I move to a new state, it's the same thing. Like I'm not going to just wing it. I mean, maybe you'll have some great neighbors, maybe your kids will go to school with some great families, but you go to church and these at the very least you're 90% similar to the people around you in terms of what you believe to be right and wrong. So I would say it's completely utilitarian. It's a smart strategy. That's number one. And then number two is that, I mean, I think that church gets a bad rap, but it's kind of neat that people sit around and discuss what they believe and why. And when you encounter someone who doesn't do that, they can feel enlightened, but they just they don't have anything that they're tethered onto. So I think it's very healthy and useful to find a group of people, both for your own practical, selfish reasons, but also to figure out what the heck you're doing.
So on that note, is there it's kind of a two-part question, but first, is there any church that you wouldn't be going to that would call themselves Christian under the umbrella of Christianity? Are there any churches that are excluded from that?
Yeah, there's an element of church shopping that happens, I would say, in the
Yeah,
world of
I was curious about
Protestants.
that process.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I'll just tell you honestly, what I look for in a church is a demographic that is made up of young families because I want them to match up with my family. So that is not a theological thing at all, but that's going to be the first thing I look for. This is just the dark world of church shopping. And you want something that's close by, and you want something that's convenient and that fits in your schedule and in how your family works and all of that. So, maybe not the most flattering, but those are important. And it's capitalism on display. You have options. They want your patronage, and people try to find what they like. Okay, so there's that. But if you go to a church, I mean, you can pretty instantly in one Sunday service, you can tell the vibe of it. And if they're saying things, I don't like political stuff at church, unless I agree with it. But for the most part, it there's like I think that the boundary between like what you learn at church versus the fickle current events of today is that's pretty important. It's nice to have a firewall between those things. And then the thing about like most Protestant churches is no matter how different they are, they're going to have the same core, five or six things. I don't know what those things are, but they're written down somewhere. You go on their website, you read the what we believe, and for the most part, you can get a sense for if this thing is compatible with your worldview. I don't like prosperity gospel. So if I see a lot of the idea of like your life will get better, you will become more prosperous, I kind of avoid that. And I don't like the big show, the fireworks displays, the swooping camera angles and all of that. Now, again, these are not theological necessarily, but they kind of point toward like, is this a church that makes money? Is this a church that makes disciples? Things like that. And then the other thing is that when you're looking at a new church, there's kind of the surface level Sunday service and Sunday sermon. And do you like the pastor? Blah, blah, blah. Um, that's 1 hour a week. But then there's the Bible studies and there's the finding people who want to dig deeper and like really try to learn things with them. That's kind of like the hidden gem where you can't really tell right away, but that's something that we look for. Like, well, are they encouraging small groups, things like that? So I wish I could say it was like a purity test where these are the things that I uphold, and if you hit them, then we're in, and if you miss them, then we're not. But it's practical. So there's a lot of practical considerations. It's not as pure as you might think. But there are certain red flags that you would definitely avoid. What those are, I mean, I would say prosperity gospel is the thing that I really dislike, and that tends to be political, and it tends to be kind of like feeding candy to everyone who comes in and just giving them what they want to hear, not challenging anybody. And if you get a sense that you're being played or that there's some snake oil selling going on, you kind of get a gut feeling and you steer clear.
So, Logan, I got a question for you then. You said that you grew up Christian, right? Like, I mean, this has been kind of your default setting. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Do you feel like there was ever a time where it switched over from in the church that Austin and I grew up in, they always call it like riding on the coattails of someone else's testimony, right? Like you can't always ride on your parents' coattails, kind of a concept. And Austin, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think both Austin and I, once we got old enough to make the decision for ourselves of whether or not we go to church, we both pretty much just opted not to. So was there ever like a time where you kind of like hit that where it was just like, I don't know if this is really that important to me, and you just opted out of it? Or have you always felt like you stuck to it?
I have the boring answer. No, I've never opted out. Now, I have been quite lukewarm and impartial about it. And in fact, when I first started undergrad, that was when church was take it or leave it. And it was my brother who was like, hey, let's find Christian club, find a community, go to church. And then, okay, sure. So I stuck with it. And then after that, that was like a very minor hiccup. And it was more one of indifference than anything. It was just, there's a lot of new things to learn here. We're in college, new community, new world. And oh, well, I guess Christianity should be a part of it. So that's what I did. And yeah, after that, it kind of picked back up because then you find community, and it's a nice thing to have because you have different college classes and majors and dorms and people come and go. But it's like, hey, now we've got a core of like 10 people that I know at least once or twice a week I'll be meeting with these people for the next 4+ years. So that helped a lot. And then, yeah, I never fell away from the church, never avoided it or anything like that.
I am curious, as far as personal revelation for you with God, the way that you found him and you clearly have a passion and a desire to follow him. Was there an event or anything that specifically stood out to you that developed that testimony and that drive to be a Christian?
No.
Got it. Just from the start.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes things kind of get baked into your identity, and there's a lot of things that I've been since I was a kid, and they're good things, and you see the value and you stick with it. So, sometimes priorities come and go, and I would say as I've gotten older, the priority of faith has increased dramatically. And I would say if there were any catalyzing instances, it's just life becomes more real as you get older. When you're young, you think you're invincible. You think you'll be around forever and the whole universe revolves around you. And then you get older and you realize that we're just hanging on by a thread, and it's pretty terrifying. And then you get married, and now someone else is hanging on to a thread, and you're hanging on to them. And then you have kids, and it's like, oh my goodness. There are a lot of ways to go wrong and not a lot of ways to go right. And you realize that the deck is stacked against you in that sense, and tragedy is around the corner, and just the reality of the world, it hits pretty hard, and then you realize it never gets better. It's gonna get worse, and the temperature's gonna go up every day from now till you're 99. And so, like, If you don't have something against that, then I mean, what a world to live in. I don't think it's even tolerable. So that's something that, it's not a catalyzing event, but just perspective, age. It kind of makes you choose a side and stick with it.
So to that effect, then, because I know from the background that we come from, there's a very specific way that we're taught to see God from a non-denominational standpoint. Do you how do you see your relationship with God?
Well, I can't speak to the non-denominational perspective. Personal perspective is there's a couple answers to that. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the trope that the more you learn about some highly technical field, the more you see God's presence in it. So there's something like that. I have a lot of technical academic background, and you kind of realize that the world is far more elegant than you think. Some people think that the magic of the world disappears if you learn about it. It's definitely the opposite. Same goes for anything. So there's that. When it comes to relationship with God or interacting with God, that sort of thing. I mean, I think that the the metaphor I'll probably go to a lot, and this is because it's very fresh in my mind, is a parent to a child, and you say, well, how does a parent and a child, what's their relationship like? And the answer is it changes. It's a lot of things. Like a good parent is hands off, but also doesn't let the kid fall off the side of a cliff. So there's going to be some balance there. I mean, you can be told what to do, or you can be shown what to do, or you can be allowed to learn what to do. I think that there's a very, very rich number of ways that you can see something bigger than just the concrete part of the world. Me personally, I think that when I was a kid, I always felt like I was being watched, like by an audience. Usually, an audience appears, and I once asked my mom what that was, and I was very young, and she thought about it, and she said, "I think that's your conscience." And I thought, "Wow, that's a great answer," and I was very happy with that answer. Um, and that kind of evolved into like that little voice in your head that I mean, how many times do you come across an ethical dilemma and you really don't know what the right answer is? Like in my mind, the answer is you always know what the right answer is. Now, whether or not you're willing to do it is a totally different question. And that's where you weigh what's really the right answer versus all of those other things that are trying to compete for your attention and your affection. But I think that people really underestimate their intuition or conscience or inner voice, whatever that thing is. I also know it doesn't come from me because it almost only tells me things I don't want to hear and holds me to things that I don't want to be held to. So that to me is a pretty clear signal of like there is a a communication that is not just me talking to myself, that seems to be exactly aligned with how the world works and how I should work in the world, should I choose to listen to it or not. And that seems to get stronger regardless of what I do. I think as I get older, it's easier to do the opposite, but it's also really easy to hear it. And so that is that's where I have the voice of God or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is, but that's something that you can't really ignore it, or you do at your own peril. And I've learned that. So, you know, that's it's not even prayer. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe there's a definition there, but I don't know if other people have it.
I was just about to ask that. Like, would you like if somebody were to push you on that and say, "Do you feel like God's talking to you?" How would you respond? Do
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what
you
else?
feel like he talks to everyone?
I have no idea.
But what do you think?
I think that a lot of people would resonate with what I'm describing, and some people would have no idea what I'm talking about. And I think that some people see signs of God in the coincidences of the world that they notice, and they're very good at noticing these things. And maybe they're not coincidences and they're patterns. And some people, they read the Bible and they feel that it's talking to them specifically right now. And some people pray, and when they pray, they hear something back. I don't, but I think that people do, and I think it's real. So I could imagine many different modes where people can hear God and interact with God. And I can't say that one is any more real than the other, or more reliable, or more effective. So,
Sure.
it's not me dodging the question. I think that I know enough people and how they operate to know better than to say that there's a way that they can hear God and I've got it and they haven't figured it out yet, or nothing like that.
So on that note, I am curious to hear your thoughts about prophets, kind of in two parts of one, what you believe a prophet is, and then two, if you believe that prophets could be current on today's timeline.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion on prophets. It's one of the gifts, it's one of the types of people. The more I've learned about the Old Testament prophets is that they're kind of eccentric characters, and they run in and they just blow everyone's mind with crazy riddles and bizarre behavior, and then they run out, and it's very fun. It's fun to think about. But honestly, like if you read the prophets, it's so bizarre. It's very hard to understand, and I think that you need to have a far better understanding of the type of literature and the events that they were going through at the time that those prophets lived, because you bring it into modern, Western Christian 2026, and it is bizarre stuff. And so I think when it comes to modern prophets, I mean, there's kind of like the capital P prophet. Is this person like up there with Elijah and Jesus, or are they just prophetic and they have a certain perspective? I have no idea. There are a lot of people who contribute and in strange ways, and maybe they're prophets. Maybe you don't know a prophet until after they're gone. I mean, I guess a prophet has to have like a perfect track record in their ability to prophesy, but then everything's such a riddle that it's hard to tell if they're right or wrong sometimes. So, yeah, I try not to dig into that. I don't think I understand prophets, their role, how they work. Are there any at the moment? That seems just a little too arcane for me.
So, and for the record, I have something that I'd really like to bring up, but I want to stay on the stream of let's dial it back from prophets then, and let's just move down to what I would consider to be kind of the next more approachable position, which is like teachers. How do you know? How do you personally? And Austin, you can weigh in on this too. Actually, I'd like to hear from both of you guys. Actually, let's start with Austin and then Logan. We'll get to you. How do you guys filter out if someone is a good teacher or not? Like, how do you critique if someone's a good teacher and you should be listening to what they say?
It's funny because I just got rid of YouTube and all the videos that, we've been getting sent from our dad. And it's really made me start thinking about where we are getting our information from. And right now I'm not going to church. And that's why I was so curious about your journey of church shopping, so to speak. Sorry. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm not necessarily a part of a group right now, which is something that I really regret because it's hard to really practice Christianity alone. And so I've really been putting a lot of thought into where do I go, because I want to be part of a community of Christ, but it's hard to know
Do you
who
have
you do
family?
go to.
Are you
Yeah.
do you have a wife and kids?
Yeah. I've got a wife and then 2 kids.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, and everything you've been saying has been resonating with me a lot.
Yeah, it makes it harder though. It's like, hey, family, there's a new deity now, or there's a
Yeah.
new church, new denomination, new this, and it's a little harder to just dive into something new, and they're relying on you to figure it out, and
Mhm.
it's hard to troubleshoot in real time.
We were raised so I was raised very LDS, and that's the culture that I'm used to and I've known, and I've spent a little bit of time in kind of the non-denominational uh grounds, but for the most part, me and my daughter would go to a different church every once in a while when we saw one that was close. But I went through those same things that it's like I want to be somewhere that's close enough that if we do, meet people that they're relevant to our community and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to be driving 30 minutes to be able to go to a church. And anyway, so it's really been kind of a struggle personally, honestly, of trying to know where to go and where I do find that kind of community.
So when you do go somewhere, how do you decide if this is a teacher that you trust or think is a good teacher?
At this point, I'm not sure that I trust anybody all that much. You know what I mean? I've become a very pessimistic man, kind of in nature, and I'm trying to really pull that back. But it's kind of more of just everything that anybody says, and I even do this with you as much as I do trust you, Johnny. Um, Everything that's said, I kind of just filter it through. Obviously, I've got my own lens, I've got my own perspective on everything so far, but I really try to see what resonates with, again, kind of what Logan was saying. There, when you ask that, I don't know that there are any dilemmas that I've ever been like, oh man, I really don't know what you would do there. It's usually pretty clear exactly what you should do, and I think all of us have that, and in the LDS culture, we call it is it the light of Christ, I believe?
Yeah, we're taught that we're all born with
Light
a
of
light of
Christ,
Christ inside us.
which is the Jiminy Cricket. It's just the conscience. It's the God.
Mhm.
God gives all of us that inherent nature to be good. It's our choice whether or not to follow that or whether to do something else. So anyway, I try to just
So you've been
filter
listening to Jordan
everything.
Peterson, Maps of Meaning?
Oh man, I have not, but I do like Jordan Peterson.
Okay, yeah, the Jiminy Cricket is a big part of that.
Oh
Um,
really?
yeah, yeah. So, I don't think you can know if you have a good teacher or not. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, and a teacher knows things that you don't, and they're going to teach it to you. And maybe it's going to be great, and maybe it's going to be awful, and you have no idea how to tell. There's no, I mean, what are you going to compare it against? You would have to already know the stuff. So, you can go to a math class and you could have a very charismatic guy teaching you stuff, and it could all be bogus. And then you get to the next class or you go work for someone and it turns out that they taught you nonsense. So how would you do that? So, I think that there's some things you can do. I mean, for one, I wouldn't trust a teacher who doesn't have his life together and who doesn't follow the things that he teaches. Now, this is more of a mentor than a teacher, because you probably don't know a teacher personally, but you would know a mentor personally. You can see what they do. There's the fruit of their labors is kind of hard to cover up, and so maybe every now and then someone shocks everybody with a crazy scandal, and it turns out that they were a much worse person than you thought. So nothing's perfect, but for the most part, you can see somebody and see like how they act around other people, how they act when they're not working. A certain consistency where they're the same person every time you meet them, and that's usually a good sign that this person is mentor worthy. Now, in my inner in my experience, a pastor is not really a mentor. A pastor is kind of like a teacher, but only for an hour every week. However long it is, and then they're really good at bringing in the vision of the church and building things up and community organizing and all of that. So I'm not usually looking at the pastor as like, this is my guy. It's nice if he can give a great sermon and knock it out of the park, but if not, no biggie. But you want to find a mentor and someone that you can see up close and interact with up close. And the nice thing is, it's really easy to do that at church. You can just go up to them and literally say, "Hello, I would like a mentor. Please introduce me to one." And they will. And then you can talk to this guy and get to know him, learn about his family, his kids, go to his house for a Bible study, eat food that he cooks, and you can pretty quickly get a sense of it if this is the real deal or not. And so, when it comes to like how you assess a teacher or a mentor or something like that, um, you gotta you can only do it up close. And so that would be my recommendation, at least, is like, don't trust them. You be skeptical. And even if they're a great guy and everything seems good, and then something happens and it just doesn't sit right with you, don't ignore that, because that might be like, that might be the dark side coming out a little bit. So you don't want to get fooled, but
Your response would be a lot more of by their fruits ye shall know them kind of a way.
yeah, they should write that down somewhere.
I think someone did.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the problem is you don't know what their fruits are, because especially now we have a world where people can portray their life in a very different way. You see what's been very carefully cultivated for you on screen. So, it's hard to tell. But I mean, I get the sense, Austin, that you have a pretty good BS meter. So I suspect that if you had a one-on-one talk with someone, you would know if they're pulling one over you or not. And then, if they're a great guy and they're doing good things, and then their understanding is just not the understanding that meshes with you, okay, you learned a new perspective, you made a friend, you learn certain qualities, and you can see what a functional life is with those qualities, and that's great. It's not wasted by any means. But then if it's not your thing, and if they're teaching a version of the world that's not aligned, then big deal. Just find someone else.
Austin, anything to add to that?
No, I love that. I mean, I guess the last thing I would say is I am also kind of getting closer to a point where I guess not everything has to, most things don't have to align for me to, I guess, find that community. Um, just in a sense of, I think going back to when we were talking about the beginnings of the podcast and the name for it and that kernel of truth, it's because we talk about so many different concepts and so many different ideas, and everybody has a little bit of the same kind of truth. And I wonder how much we put different packaging on it and different, somebody selling it in different ways, but there's really only so many core concepts that are really the meat of the problem, and that's what really matters. And I think we share far more in those categories than we don't among most of the Christian sects, you know what I mean? So I think maybe I don't care as much. Yeah.
Can I add two things?
Yeah.
Number one is we could have a easy metaphor. Say you want to find a piano teacher, right? How do you know? First off, you make them play the piano when you listen, and are they actually good at it? Because if they're no good, I don't want them to teach my kids. It's simple as that. They could be the greatest teacher in the world, but if they can't play the piano, sorry, I'm going to pass. And that's where I think if you had to assess the quality of a piano teacher, it's not that hard to do. Sit in on the lessons, ask them a few questions. I mean, you're going to know if is this just a low quality pianist who's learned how to get a buck, or is this someone who's just transcendental in some way and you want to learn it? So, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Take the example anywhere else and say any teacher out there. You can't know. You don't know piano better than even a poor piano teacher, but you can have them play something really cool. You can compare it to others. You can ask someone who knows their stuff and say, "Hey, this guy played this and he told me XYZ. Does that check out? Does it pass the smell test?" Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. The other thing I want to say is that, the official answer to all of this is pray about it. So, that's what I would be expected to say, and that's what like my various mentors would be very angry if I didn't say that. Now, that's easy for someone to say, but what the heck does that even mean? So that's why I won't give that as advice because I don't know how to apply it, how to generalize it, or anything like that. But just so you know, that's the official answer, probably.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on this. First, I want to address the last thing Logan said. The thing I want to say about what Logan said, because I agree 100%. I think the pray about it is the ultimate answer. And Austin and I, when we have these debates or when we go back and forth on like, well, there's a lot of evidence that points this direction, and there's a lot of evidence that points this direction, and ultimately, at the end of the day, Austin, what do we always come back to?
Always land at prayer.
You always got to take it to the big guy upstairs. You've just that's there's
There's
so
one
much
source
that
of truth.
right. There's one source. Have you taken it to God yet? I want to expand and push forward what Logan just said about like, well, what does that even really mean? Like, does that mean that I'm like in my prayers tonight, I'm going to say, hey, help us get a good night's rest tonight, and also, what in the world does this mean? Like, what does that actually? Where does the rubber meet the road when someone says pray about it? The pray about it concept to me has much more become once I did actually experience God to a way where it was undeniable to me, and nobody has to take this for other than just Gospel of Johnny. But once I had an experience where I really did feel like there is clearly a presence here that is not me. This is not my thoughts. There's something that I'm thinking in my head. I'm getting this burning sensation in my stomach, and I know that can be a buzzword depending on which denomination you're in. But I'm having a thought that is causing such strong feelings in my heart that this is undeniably something other than just me kicking thoughts around in my head. I had a very strong witness about the thought that I was having. That is in that moment, that feeling, that thought, that whatever it was so unique and so powerful that I don't get that very often. It was very, very unique in that way. So now when I take something to God, I kind of use that as the litmus test. I kind of go like, I'm really struggling about X, or I really need to know Y, or I really need help with blank. When that feeling and that presence and that whatever it was isn't there, then that is a response. No response is a response at times. And then there have been times where I've gotten that again. I've gotten that thought that came into my head, which was accompanied by clear, and I hate to use the word excitement because it's not like excitement. Excitement can almost be like a scary thing, and it's not. It's just such a strong feeling of, for me, it's familiarity. Like I tried to explain this to somebody when I was debating with someone online, but it was like, have you ever gone into your parents' house and you open the door and your whole family's in there and they all turn and they go, hey, and like they're all excited that you walked in the door, and you feel that nostalgic, familiar, safe, just it's a familiar feeling. Your soul recognizes that feeling. And it's very clearly not because of something you ate or whatever. Like there are some emotions that I think we can sometimes misjudge. There's other ones that I think are very unique. And if you've experienced that, you've experienced that. You know what I'm talking about. So the praying thing for me, just because we were saying what does that look like, and I apologize, it's long-winded, but to me, the praying about it is, I think once you experience what you consider to be God, and it may be different for all three of us and everyone else in the world, but once you've nailed down what you believe is God, you now use that as your litmus test against all the new additions that you want to add to. You go, does this give me that same feeling? Does this ring true the way the other thing rang true? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I was only going to ask, and you kind of already answered it, but I was curious whether your first, obviously you've told me a lot, or you've mentioned before that first really come back to, and it felt like coming home, and it felt very familial in that way. Have you had that same level of emotional reaction with other times that you prayed? Is it common with every time that you're wanting to receive something back from God? Are you getting that level of kind of interaction? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not getting that level of intensity. That was a very unique and intense experience. And Logan, just so you're not totally left out in the dark, I just hit a low a year and a half ago where I really hit a low, and I was not feeling like I was the kind of person I was supposed to be, and I didn't feel equipped to lead my family or to do the things that I felt like I needed to do. And so I hit a low spot, and I ended up just kind of basically going to God and pouring my whole soul out, like in a dark room, on my knees. Just I don't even know how long. I probably only a couple of minutes, but it felt like a very very long time. And then I got a response. I genuinely had a thought come into my mind where it was just this very powerful emotion to me, where it was really funny, like you said, like it tells you things that you don't want to hear. The thought was something that I wasn't asking for. I was asking a question, and that was not the answer that I wanted. But it was such a undeniable feeling in my gut, where it was like, I know this is not my mind coming up with solutions to this. I know that this is a real solution, that the universe, or in my paradigm, it's God. God is saying, Jonathan, I know you. I've been here the whole time. This is what you need to do. And it was it was a gentle, but such a strong feeling that to me it was undeniable. There is a presence in this room. He does know me. He loves me. What I did is okay. It's going to be okay. And this is how I can be better from here on out. And that feeling was so strong. It stayed with me, honestly, 4 days, like probably 5 or 6 days. I felt different. And it was such an obvious difference that even a year and a half later, I will never deny. I don't know so much stuff, but I will die. I will die as a martyr in my belief that there is a God, that he knows me he knows me intimately, and that he will speak to me to try to guide me in good ways. That is the core of my testimony, and that's something I am willing to have somebody point a gun to my head and say, deny it. I can't. I know what I felt. I know that God knows it. That one I'm super, super solid on. All the stuff that we talk about after that, and I've had experiences where I have felt answers to my prayers. They haven't been that intense. They haven't been that strong. I just had an experience, and I told Austin about this, but I had an experience where in church they asked me to play piano. They asked me to do a piano solo in church. And I was like, I don't have any songs prepared. Just so you know, I don't play anymore. I play percussion every Wednesday night. I rarely sit down at a piano. I have not practiced, and I have not written music in over a decade at this point.
Man, Johnny, you got to
Yeah.
write some music.
Well,
Wow.
this last 2 weeks, so when the person was texting me, she's like, would you like to play? We're going to have this theme about prayer. Would you like to do that? And in my head, I was like, well, I guess I could always play Crystal Bells. That's an easy piano solo that's just so ingrained in my memory. At this point, sure, I could whip that out. But that's not really a church song. It doesn't feel like it would fit the vibe. And like, I don't think that's a good song to play. And she was like, well, if you're just willing to bring a humble offering to God, and you do it with a humble heart and a genuine spirit, it'll be fine. Whatever you've got, just bring it. And in that moment, a different song that I'd had the melody, in my head for years since high school, but I'd never fully fleshed it out, never developed it. That came into my head. And without thinking, I responded and was like, okay, I'll have a song ready. What day is it? She's like, cool, have it ready by the 22nd. And after talking to her, I immediately got down on my knees and was like, God, I just signed up for this. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but if you give me the notes, I'll play it. Because that's been my recent push that I've really tried to do with this podcast, with teaching my kids, with just my life in general, my attitude, and in my prayers. I've really tried to incorporate, God, just tell me what to say and I'll say it. I don't think I'm as qualified as many people out there, but I am willing, and whatever you want me to say, I'm willing to say. Put me in front of somebody and I'll testify. And that's been my attitude recently. So I tested this out, and I hit my knees and asked God to tell me with that. And I've developed the entire song, and the song sounds different than it did in my head, like in my mind, the way I thought it was going to be structured. It came out different, but I came up with an intro. I came up with a bridge. I came up with a closing. The whole song's done now, and I love it. It's way better than it was before. And for somebody who hasn't played piano recently and who hasn't been writing music recently, to iron out and be able to present this song to my entire neighborhood in a week, it was a different experience for me. So that's not near as intense as my first experience was, but to me, it still is. I'll put it in the same category. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, as the one who heard it, it is a beautiful song. So it actually did work really well. I am gonna
Thank you.
say there's a whole bunch of the questions that I did want to. I was wondering if maybe we do a little bit of and obviously none of these questions really can be a quick answer necessarily, but maybe we just
But
do.
anything can be a quick answer.
All right. I would kind
Logan
of like.
takes
Let's
that as a
try it.
challenge.
I
Yes,
love it.
absolutely.
Let's do some rapid fire then. All
All
right.
right. I'll
So
give a controversial quick answer, and then should you want to explore, then it's on you to make it
yeah,
into a long answer.
no, that's
Love it.
perfect. Let's see which ones we haven't talked about already. Oh, the Sola Scriptura.
Yeah, for the record, there is a book called The Key to the Keystone where he dives into the Apocrypha. There is so much out there in the Apocrypha. Do yourself a favor and read the book. Just read the book. What's your thoughts on the Bible?
Okay, what is sola scriptura? I can guess from the words, but I'd like to hear someone explain it to me because I don't know the term.
Believing that the Bible is the infallible word of God and the ultimate authority of God's word on the earth. Austin, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I probably should have done a little Google definition of it, but yeah, I mean that's the way I've always understood it was it is the final say and people can interpret it, but no one can, I guess, what's the word?
Oh, they do. It's the Bible interprets itself.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth for the Bible. Is that what that means?
Basically.
Yeah, sure. I'll say yes.
So I guess one question, the follow-up I would be having with that is when you especially when you're going to different churches, when you find people that are interpreting different scripture differently, or you're getting into a little bit, it's not necessarily core doctrine of what matters to you or what you think is, you know, saving your soul, so to speak. What do you do with those kind of different interpretations, or does that go back to the answer of prayer?
I mean, people interpret every. I won't go back to the answer of prayer because that's just it's too easy, right?
Right.
No, I mean people interpret everything differently, right? Look at anything, and people are going to interpret it differently, and so you know, there's two solutions. One is to say the Bible is the ultimate authority, the end all, be all, and then it's a bit of a free for all on how you're going to interpret it, but it is that. And then the other is to say that the church is the ultimate authority. They are the end all, be all. And so basically they hold the answers. And sometimes they know the answers. So the Catholics know the answers. Sometimes they don't. So like the Orthodox, they don't, but they like mystery and they're okay with it. Um, or, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because you're the LDS expert here, but there's kind of a solution of both, right? Like the Bible is the authority, and the interpretation was given or presented or however else. And so that's another way of solving that problem. I live in the non-denominational or other denominations as they present themselves, where it's the Bible that's the ultimate authority. But then you have that very sticky question of who's interpreting it? How are we interpreting it correctly? How are we getting the right translation? There's 100 of them. There's well more than that. Which one's the right one? And it's endless. You can't figure this out. And so then the question is, well, do you say I can figure it out? Do you say it's personal? Prayer will figure it out. Or do you say it's a huge mystery and I'm just going to explore it for my whole life? That's what I like. So that's where I've landed. Is like I don't think that anyone is ever going to get the interpretation correct. I don't think it's possible in the first place. I also don't know any institutions that I trust enough to say that they've got the authority. So I'll say that the authority is in this cryptic 66 book document that is insanely difficult to understand. And the cool thing is you can study it for your whole life and it will only increase in complexity. And I like that. And I'm comfortable with that. And I will say that as I read it and as I study it, I get more confused, never less confused. And I get better at living life correctly, whatever that is. So I think that's a great solution. It's like learning an instrument. I'll never be a perfect pianist. And the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and the better I get also. You get to have your cake and eat it too. So I'm okay with that. I would say that the Bible it's complete, but there's other documents, and I'm sure you could learn tons of interesting things. I mean, I learn things from reading C.S. Lewis, and that doesn't have to be canonical to do that. So, I'm okay with this. And then if I can get together with my friends and colleagues and study, and we all end up confused, but hey, we just spent an hour analyzing what we know and what we think we know. That's a huge win. And so I think that that's a good deal.
But let me ask you this. Do you feel like the Bible has to be historically accurate or historically factual to be a true Word of God book?
I would say, all right, don't quote me on this. Don't put this in a YouTube short or something, but absolutely not. No, not even close. That's what I would say. So this one I did think about before the podcast, and here's what I'll tell you. My grandpa passed away a couple years ago. Pop. I don't know if you ever met him.
I met him.
You did. That's so
I
cool.
did.
Here's the thing about Pop. Larger than life. He was an entire planet on his own. He was the center of the whole family. I mean, everything revolved around him. He was the most stubborn, crazy, ridiculous guy. If he started talking to you, you would need to signal someone to come rescue you and like physically extract you from his orbit because he was just
Gravitational field.
yeah, I mean, the guy his personality was so huge, and he was huge. He was physically like this. Okay, so all that stuff I said is not true. None of that really happened exactly the way I said it. It is not historically accurate, but it tells you the truth of exactly who Pop was. I mean, if instead I gave you like 10 anecdotes, first off, that would take forever. And secondly, you would barely know the guy. But like who he was is he was this symbolic thing. He was just this crazy metaphor for life that he did. And when he passed away, I went to his funeral. This is historically true. They booked a whole park, like an actual field. And my brother and I performed there. People gave speeches. I mean, there were hundreds of people, a literal entire park in the middle of LA, not middle, but in the outskirts of LA, was full of people who were like just part of his universe. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. And so what I'll say is, I don't think historical accuracy is a requirement or even necessary or even helpful for the ability of a story to exist and to convey truth that is way more relevant and important forever. That being said, that does not mean I don't believe that it is historically accurate. So, if we were going to discuss whether Moses was real and whether his miracles were real, we could have a great discussion about that. And I think they were. I think they were presented in a way that is very excellent storytelling, probably embellished, probably, crafted and all of these things. The way that everything's written is so hyper interconnected that it's amazing. And there's these gems. And I mean, if you read the historical account of something, you would read it and be done. Whereas here, you can study this tiny story because all these stories are very small. I mean, you can study it for literally thousands of years and still be pulling nuggets out of it. Like that's a crazy accomplishment. And that does not come from being a neutral third party observer who's just stating the facts. That comes from like, this is the pattern of reality. And this is how it's laid itself out at this point in time. That is way cooler. Now, if we're discussing the creation of the universe in 6 days, I mean, who cares? I don't care at all if it was 6 days or not. Because to me, it's like, well, what am I going to learn if it happened in 6 days? Like, how does it do anything? And so, like, maybe it was. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but it wasn't. Of course, it wasn't. Like, obviously, the universe is an elegant thing, and I once got into an argument. In fact, my now wife, when we were dating, she took me to her church, and I couldn't help myself, and I started arguing with this guy because he said that if you don't believe that the world was created in 6 days, that's page one. You've already lost it. Like you've already said that the Bible is false on the first page. How can you be trusted to interpret anything in the whole Bible? And I took offense to that, and so I came up to him very politely afterwards, and we hashed it out. And at one point he says, "Here's what I believe. I believe in a big God, big God and all that." I said, "Well, I believe in an elegant God." So there, like, but what else is there to say? Anyway, it turns out that my wife liked my being a jerk to these strangers in a church, and that scored
Pretty
me some.
gutsy to Bible bash on a date.
I know. It was not a wise decision, but maybe it was. So anyway,
Clearly it panned
all
out.
that
Worked out,
says-
yeah.
Yeah, it worked out. So the idea of historical accuracy being a necessary prerequisite for the Bible to be true, or to be, I don't remember how the question ended, but to be what it is
Be true.
to be true. Yeah, as no, I don't think so at all.
Austin, what are your thoughts on that?
We talked about it just a little while ago of, does it need to be historically accurate to be able to make a difference in your life? And I think anybody who's read it and does try to bring it into their daily life will say that well, maybe not everyone will say that, but I think a lot of us would say that it doesn't have to be historically accurate. If the effect is what the effect is, does it matter? I think that's kind of just where I've landed, and that's really, as we've had conversations with the Book of Mormon. I mean, obviously, my specific upbringing, we focused a lot more on the Book of Mormon than we ever did on the Bible. At least I did specifically, and so it was at the times that I felt the most connected to God, I was specifically using the Book of Mormon, and so if the effect does what it did for me, doesn't matter if it's true, because I've now fallen into places where I'm not really sure what the whole story is with the Book of Mormon or the church in general, and I have a lot of questions around a lot of that. But the effect, I think, is still pretty clear from either the Bible or the Book of Mormon. Anytime I use either one of them, I have better effects in my life. So to me, it's just
I'd like to
not.
amend one thing because we're using the word true, and it's going to go Jordan Peterson on everyone and say, what is true? What do you mean by true? Is it true? Is it meta true? Is it hyper true? All of that, but we're talking like a utilitarian form of true, which is making a difference in your life and all of that. That's certainly a valid definition.
Trick.
I do want to explain my definition of true, which is similar but not the same, which is, to me, true is something which explains the structure of reality and the structure of the universe. And it makes sense that if you understand how the world works and how the universe works and how it lays itself out and how you navigate through it, that would lead to, a sense of utility and better outcomes and all of that. But maybe not. Maybe you'll get martyred, who knows? But at the end of the day, I would say really what I'm saying in answer to your question is that historical accuracy is not a necessary prerequisite for something to clearly and consistently explain the pattern of reality.
I like that definition. For the record, in our very first episode, we wanted to define what we were calling as truth, and the definition that we settled on was a knowledge of things as they really are, and that's what we're defining as truth. And obviously, that opens up a whole can of worms of, you
What
know,
we're all searching for, and I guess what the whole conversation's always about.
and to that end, just I think kind of a fun, less religious topic to kind of wrap things up with. So this is a great segue here. I found some photos on my phone maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were photos of Logan and I back in our college days. And I send them over to him, and I'm like, "Man, do you remember this?" And he's like, "Unfortunately, yep, I do." And he said a line which I got to give you credence for it. It kind of shifted my paradigm a little bit, where he said, "Fortunately for me, the statute of limitations on embarrassing photos is about to run up because AI is getting so good. Whatever it is a photo of, you
Yeah.
can just claim it's a deep fake."
So that is not my original thought. You know, the ultimate idea, this came from actually, do you know who Brett Weinstein is?
That name sounds familiar.
Brett Weinstein. Yeah, he's an evolutionary biologist. He has a podcast. You know, he's a leftist, but then the left kind of moved too far and he stayed still. And then they rejected him, so he's kind of homeless and he's not religious at all, but you know, very interesting perspectives to learn from. And anyway, I stole that from him. And basically, what he said was in reference to Epstein and this kind of dark world of blackmail. And he said, basically, we're reaching the statute of limitations on blackmail because you could have the most horrific blackmail on somebody. And if you can wait it out a few more years, AI is going to poison the well. And now, did AI create that or was that real? So, you know, it's a very interesting idea. But the universe, I mean, the world might change dramatically if all of the structures that are held together by blackmail, if that's indeed how they are held together, will no longer work anymore. So that's why your embarrassing pictures of you and I as undergraduate with our sense of, you know, fashion or whatever else we thought was cool at the time, you know, it's
So what you're
ending.
saying is leak them now while they still hold potency.
You can if you want. I don't see what you'll get out of it, but you can.
I was really
I
expecting you to be worth a lot more money by now, Logan. I've been holding on to these
I've
with
got
the hope
nothing.
that you were going to be
what
a
was the
millionaire by now.
point? Yeah, I honestly never even really thought about that, but that really is. There is just nothing anymore that you can see, and that going back to the conversation we were having earlier of how do you know or trust anything that you're seeing, especially when you're doom scrolling on any kind of the apps. I mean, there's just so much information that's getting thrown at you, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
Can I introduce one thing that I think is really cool? Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
before Brett Weinstein has a recent post which I thought was really good and really interesting. So here is an atheist, full-blown atheist, and he is contending with the fact that the world has gotten worse since religion was rejected. You know, in the West now, we now have science. We have objective truth, objective reality, and it has overtaken. I mean, yeah, I remember growing up, Dawkins, you know, Hitchens and Sagan and others, they were all the rage, and it was cool to be a super atheist and to just reject all religion outright. Sure. And the world that they created kind of stinks, relatively speaking. And so he was contending with that. And he said something along the lines of, when we got rid of religion, we got rid of a structure which, even if you don't believe in it, it can read your mind and it can demand truthful behavior and it cannot be gamed. So if I have an ethical dilemma ahead of me and I know in my head what the right answer is, but I can easily make a utilitarian answer that benefits me and my family by doing the wrong thing, easy decision. You can game the system. But if you put a God or Santa Claus or whomever else, someone who can literally read your mind and hold you to that standard, and who has the magical power of total justice in the longest of the timelines. You can't game that system. Basically, from the moment you have that thought, you've got to do it, or else you know that you are in trouble. And he said, we got rid of that. So now, how is anyone going to do the right thing when it doesn't benefit them? That's what we tossed out when we tossed out religion. Now, this is a completely secular interpretation, but what he's saying is that there is an extremely easy to understand importance to a religious culture, and we're seeing what happens when you get rid of that. So I think it's a great idea to think about because it doesn't come from us. We don't really think that way. But if you're thinking about somebody who's giving credit where it's due, he's saying that, well, the religious structure, and it may not be Christianity, it could be any religious structure, it essentially keeps you from gaming the system in terms of your own ethics. It makes that thing impossible. And if you were to look at religion as an extension of evolution, survival of the fittest, the best things survive and pass their genes on, religion does too. The best ideas survive and they pass their genes on. And there's a reason that Christianity is the one that emerged in the West, and there's a reason that others emerged in other places. And it's not random. It's that these ones outcompeted the others. And now we're taking all of that and we're saying, superstitious garbage, and we're throwing it in the trash. And look what's happening. So anyway, just wanted to share that because I think it's a really cool way of looking at things. I think it's a compelling case that requires no religious premise to start with. You don't need to know or care about anything in the Christian world to appreciate the fact that Christianity was very useful and getting rid of it was very dangerous.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Austin. I mean, at this point, I'm trying to scroll less, but there's plenty of things that I've seen online where I've had to double check. And is this, did this really happen? Is this an AI? Can I find this news story on the little logo that it shows in the bottom left corner? Like, is this a real actual story or not? And honestly, half of the times I can't even find the actual original story. I can't find it corroborated anywhere. I can just find 100 links that all go back to the same YouTube short video. And it's definitely changing to the point where, if I see it on a screen, unfortunately, I just can't trust it.
I'm gonna be honest, what makes me so mad is when they do AI videos of things that we have in the real world. Like when you get an AI video of a cute cat doing something, it's like, you didn't need an AI video of this. We have that's what the internet was for. Like, we have this. Why are you making it fake? Like, there's just not even a need for this one. I'm so tired of any kind of new information because I just don't trust any of it. Like I said, I'm becoming a pessimist, but that's where I'm at.
Okay. I've got two things here. Number one is, has anyone ever listened to the War of the Worlds broadcast?
I've not.
Do you know about it? The radio broadcast, Orson Welles? It's so cool. You can find it on YouTube.
Oh,
Hopefully.
I actually have heard about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue, though.
Yeah, Orson Welles, he's an awesome guy, by the way. You listen to any interview, and the moment he speaks, something about the way he talks is just like, you have to listen, and you're on board with him immediately. He's amazing. And so basically he had a radio show, and he took War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, no relation to Orson Welles, spelled differently. And he adapted it for radio, and he did it in a way that was intentionally misleading, and he presented it as if it was really happening. Now, there was a disclaimer at the beginning and all that, but who's listening to the whole thing? Like, you tune in and someone calls you and says, listen to the radio, and you listen to, and you're hearing about, I mean, I don't remember everything, but, they took over DC, the aliens have landed, they've defeated the military, and it's high quality, it's modern stuff. Like, he's got interviews. He's like, oh, we're cut to General so-and-so, and it was not like honeymooners, like really obviously show stuff. This was presented very well, and it caused panic. There's a lot of funny stories. He tells a story of a couple who canceled their honeymoon because of that, and they were obviously very upset. And it was a huge hoax, and he tricked everybody, and the important lesson was that the radio is just technology, and you can't just assume that it's telling you the truth. Then TV came, and everybody forgot that lesson, and everybody believed everything they saw on TV. Then the internet came, and everyone believed everything they saw on the internet. And now AI is here, and it's like, what's new? You know, it's magic, just like all the other pieces of technology. It tricks us just like all the others do. We think that it's telling us the truth. We think that it's real, and it's not. So on one hand, I would have to say, like, so what? It's more sophisticated than now. What's new about it? We've always been tricked by whatever it is that communicates to us.
Agree. I really hope that it's not a another new internet where all of a sudden everybody believes it, because this is going to be way too easy for every loot. At the very least, with radio and with TV, there was a little bit of a bar of entry. You had to have the equipment, you had to have the means to be on that platform and to spread your narrative. But with the low cost of entry with AI, man, anybody can get on and make a very convincing narrative. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's just going to be.
Yeah, but those aren't the narratives that you need to watch out for. Like, there's a lot of slop out there, and it stinks to come across. But
Mhm.
like, I mean, did you notice when Reddit got poisoned?
No, I wasn't on it.
I don't have an account on Reddit or anything, but I would go to my favorite subreddits and stuff. And at some point, I started to realize, and this was right at the start of AI, that nothing on it was real. Like, the people weren't real, the discussions weren't real, the debates weren't real, and it was weird. And then later AI came out, or at least became more, publicly known, and it was like, oh my goodness, you don't have to pay people to go push a narrative on a forum and to hit the like button and to boost something and brigade something. And, back then you used to have a following, and there was a trail when you go on your stream and you say, hey, go brigade this person. Nowadays, I mean, I don't know who's doing it. Probably part of the military industrial complex, but they can just take any narrative they want, and bam, Reddit is aligned. And Reddit has 100 feisty users who are going to argue against anything you say. And that was, you know, three, well, 20, when was COVID? That was a while ago. But, before AI came out, that was impossible. You didn't know that could happen. How long was that happening before we found out about it? I mean,
Yep.
surely it was happening already. Um, so, it's 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 worse than radio and TV and all of that, because we are deeply programmed to seek consensus. Like, consensus is your safe zone, and then you step away. Like, a child steps away from their parent until they encounter something a little too scary, and then they run back to their safe spot with the parent. That's consensus. And now they can create that, like, instantly. They can make anything consensus today if they wanted to. They can assassinate somebody, and whatever they want to be the consensus, bam, it's there, and now everyone on the internet thinks it's true. Or they can release, well, you know what I'm going to say, that there's all sorts of things that can be done now where you want instant consensus, you have it, and even when you know it's happening, it is really, really hard to see 100 posts that all say the same thing, and to not feel like that's your people and that's your safe zone and that's your default, when and it's because back in the day, it would have been really hard to get 100 people to all line up on their point of view. Like, it must have been a strong point of view. Nowadays, it's just bots.
It's funny because the Bible gives a definition for how you'll know what is true, right? And it always says that if God is to bring something out, it'll be in the words of two or three witnesses. And so the idea of witnesses obviously held a lot of sway thousands of years ago. If you could even get two or three people to agree on the narrative, that was good enough for the law at that point. And you just kind of see that play out in today's world. We still kind of follow the same thing. You know, if this person's saying this on their social media platform and they have 2 million followers, well, he must be telling the truth. You know, 2 million people agree with this. Like, we're using the same laws, just infinitely, more magnified with the internet.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that what we're heading toward is a place where the internet is a place to go to just, I mean, to me, it's like going on the internet. It's like walking into a casino and saying, you're not going to get me. I've got the thing that makes me immune to this. And, maybe you do, or maybe you don't. And I don't think that's worth the gamble. So you go on the internet, and if you go there for news, I mean, how are you going to know? And so without that, I'm really happy with where this is heading, which is you trust what you see with your own eyes and nothing else. And that would, at least people would start using their own eyes again and just like get outside, talk with people,
Go
stop.
touch grass.
Which is funny, yeah, maybe we go full circle of now the internet has gotten so outrageous that everybody just abandons it and we go back to pre-internet where you don't trust anything that is on it. So it's almost like you never had it. And you just trust what
Yeah,
you
I mean,
see with your
this
own
is
eyes.
it's already happening. Especially, parents are especially attuned to this because it's like I didn't grow up with the internet already formed and the algorithms already formed. And I was there when the internet started and it was the Wild West and it was hilarious and crazy and all of that. And then I kind of watched it get, slowly,
I'll say civilized.
no, not at all,
Definitely not
throttled was
civilized.
the word I was looking for is throttled, where you can just
Uh,
see that I don't know, the internet just stopped being this thing of like complete crazy openness and started turning into like, wait, there's only 3 websites now. Like that's kind of weird. And so even then, it's still really hard to get off the internet and to get off the phone and the computer and all of that. And then I see my kids, and it's like they're growing up in this. This is their world. It it's not my world, and I can't get off of it. How how are they going to?
yep.
So, I mean, that's pretty horrifying. And so I'm hoping, I mean, a lot of parents are pushing back on the improper use of technology, giving their kids smartphones, getting, letting them be on social media and encounter anonymous people who, there's an idea that the child predators are not out there anymore because they're online, right? Like the neighborhood is safer now than it's ever been because you can go online and you can find targets there way easier. And so I don't know how true that is, but it seems right to me.
Does. No, there's been study after study of there's some guy who worked for the CIA who's like, I am a literal professional. I am the world's leading expert in brainwashing, and I'm scared to death of social media. I will never let my kids on it. And there's who was it over Apple who was like, no, I don't let my kids be on an iPhone. Of course not.
Yeah.
Like
Steve Jobs.
they, yeah, they admit it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Austin, do you have daughters?
I have a daughter and an a son.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, social contagions are a thing that girls will encounter, and it seems to be happening younger and younger now. And I remember when I was growing up, it was cutting. That was the big social contagion of like late middle school, early high school, and eating disorders. I forget if that came before or after the cutting, but eating disorder.
It
I
was
remember
before. That
before.
was big
Okay.
when I was in high school.
Yeah, yeah, I heard all about that. And it's like nowadays it would be easy as a parent to identify the signs and to, get out of whatever those vicious cycles are. But nowadays it's not cutting and eating disorders. What is it? What's the next one? By the time my daughters are in high school, what's it going to be? I guarantee it's going to be on TikTok or whatever the equivalent is. And that's going to be pushing it. And there's going to be people grooming them and, looking for their victims and pulling them into these weird behavioral patterns. But we have no idea. Like, we're a bunch of dudes who, we're not in those circles. We don't know what they're exposed to and what they're seeing and what their friends are saying. And so I think any responsible parent needs to look ahead to that if you have daughters and say, well, how are we going to avoid these social contagions, whatever they're going to be? We don't know what they are. We don't know where they are, but they're going to find this community. And then boys, meanwhile, are dealing with being, they're being destroyed. Toxic masculinity, not being allowed to just do the things that they're supposed to do. And there's a whole problem there too. But, I'd say the moment any of this starts happening, take them out of school, move them to a farm, make them work with their hands until they're all better, right? Like, that's guaranteed to work regardless of what else. So that's my contingency plan.
I love it.
Austin and I have talked multiple times about how we just need to go buy 50 acres out in the mountains somewhere and move our whole family to a giant compound.
Yeah. Logan,
Right on.
it's been great talking to you, man. I really wish we could have had this conversation in person.
But no, it was a pleasure, Austin. It was nice to meet you formally and chat with you. And yeah,
Absolutely.
Johnny once told me that he and his siblings were split into two different camps, just like aesthetically, and I can see that now, having met
The gingers
your
and the
sisters.
Mexicans.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is very funny. Oh, Johnny, my brother Alan, he just had a baby boy 2 days ago.
Hey,
He did. 3
congratulations,
days ago,
Alan.
Friday the 13th. So
Oh, that's
Oh.
awesome.
yeah. Now, it was funny because labor started on the 13th, but it was pretty late, and it was like, could be the 14th. And I told my brother, I was like, hey, you should make sure that it lasts into the 14th. And he goes, no, we don't want to lose Valentine's Day. So he would rather his son be born on Friday the 13th so that they keep their Valentine's Day open than to
I love it.
Yeah. So
The next podcast is going to be on the truth about superstitions.
Oh, that's good.
that
I
would
like
be
it.
awesome. I would love to.
That would be a fun one to deep dive. All right.
All right.
Well, gentlemen, thank you again for joining us for this pursuit of truth in the only way that we know how to find it. Thank you again, guys. That was fun.
Have a good night, guys.
See you guys later.